Hi, I'm Miriam at Some Kind of Farm, and this is a video series called Farm Rules, where we talk about the rules and regulations associated with owning a small farm or homestead. The rules and regulations around farming are so many layers deep. You have rules all the way to the national level, and you have rules that might be within your own neighborhood. Today's episode is about raising chickens as pets and for personal consumption eggs. When it comes to owning chickens in your own yard, you have to consider three things. You have to consider zoning laws, you have to consider the covenants on your property, and you have to consider any building permit requirements in your community. Zoning ordinances are something that the town puts in place, determining which activities can happen on which property in that town. So even if you have a rural property that has plenty of land, you may still fall under a residential zone that does not allow you to raise chickens in your yard. The way to find this out is you go to the town in question's website. First of all, I would search for zoning ordinances in your town, your state, and find out what the zoning map looks like for the property in question. This might be a property you already own, or this might be a property you're considering purchasing. So find out what that property is zoned as. Then pull up the zoning ordinances for the specific town and look up what the area requires for that particular zoning. Some places have multiple different residential zones, all which have definitions of requirements. Those ordinances will oftentimes have a table in it that says chickens with permit only, or livestock allowed if you have over 5 acres. So there's a lot to consider in that sense, and it's really important to do your research because you don't want to find out a year down the road that you were out of compliance and have to give away your chickens. The next aspect to consider is any covenants you may have on your property. Covenants are usually agreements made when the properties are built between the houses in the neighborhood, saying this is what's allowed to happen on your property. I've only actually read one before, and it was 7 pages long, so it can be a pretty complex contract. One of the things that's complex about covenants is that unless you have a homeowners association, they may be very loosely enforced. You could have several neighbors on the street that have chickens, but your neighbor may get upset that your rooster woke them up at 6 a.m. and sue you for breach of contract. On the other hand, covenants can be good because they may allow you a certain number of chickens on your property. As long as you're below that number, your neighbor can't sue you. Now, covenants are harder to research than the tax ordinance map, obviously. If you're looking at a new property, you can ask the real estate agent for any covenants associated with the property. If you purchased the house, hopefully you received a copy of the covenants when you closed on that property. It might be in that giant jumble of paperwork you already have. So your zoning and covenants say you can have chickens. Do they say you can have a rooster? Because that is surprisingly shocking to a lot of people, that they're allowed to have chickens, but the noisy fellas aren't welcome in their communities. Another aspect to consider when you're buying your chickens is how many chickens is the minimum quantity in your state. Some states may have numbers as high as 12. My particular state, I think it's 3 or 4. So keep that in mind because next you're going to design your coop. Coop brings us to the third part of what is necessary for chickens for personal consumption. Do you need a building permit to build your coop? Some towns allow you to build anything under a certain size without pulling a permit. Others require the code enforcement officer to show up and issue you a permit based on your plans. So it's an important aspect to consider before you're even starting the build. You don't want that code enforcement officer showing up at your home. So I hope you found this information useful to you and that you are well on your way to finding what you need to find before you even decide if you're going to get chickens. Hopefully you found this video useful and you are well on your way to doing the research that you need to do to understand if you can even have chickens on your property. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. We will be doing follow-up videos on keeping chickens for eggs and for meat and live bird sales. If you have any topics you want us to cover on Farms Rule, please provide us a recommendation and we will be happy to add it in our queue of videos to make later. Thank you so much. Follow me on social media at Some Kind of Farm, and I hope to see you again soon.